What mattered most in the fallout of Sean Strickland's middleweight title upset of Israel Adesanya at UFC 293 at Kudos Bank Arena in Sydney? If you were to draw up the perfect title-winning moment for Strickland, this was it. He used his best attributes to the fullest over the course of 5 rounds and left with a unanimous decision win over Adesanya to claim the 185-pound belt. Before going to the bits and stats of the fight, let's look at the two fighters. A fighter who can move like a dancer, strike like a surgeon, and adapt like a chameleon. That's Israel Adesanya, one of the most dazzling athletes in the world. He has a record of 24 wins and 3 losses in mixed martial arts, a sport that combines different fighting styles. But Adesanya is not just a fighter, he's an artist. He draws inspiration from various sources like hip-hop, anime, and movies. He blends them together to create his own unique expression of violence and beauty. Adesanya was born in Nigeria, where he started learning Taekwondo as a kid, but his mother pulled him out of the program after he broke his arm. His family moved to Ghana for a while, then to New Zealand, where he got a better education. He also got into anime, especially Naruto, a show about ninjas with special powers. He loved the way they fought with speed and skill. He always loved dancing, especially crumping, a form of hip-hop that involves fast and aggressive movements. He learned it from watching Rise, a documentary by Dave LaChapelle. He joined a dance crew and competed in national events, but dancing was not enough for him. He wanted to fight like his heroes on the screen. He was hooked by Ong Bak, a movie starring Tony Jaa, a master of Muay Thai, a martial art that uses elbows and knees as weapons. He decided to train in Muay Thai and kickboxing, and soon he was traveling all around Asia and Australia to fight in tournaments. He won many titles and awards, but he wanted more. He wanted to test himself in the ultimate challenge, the UFC. He joined the UFC in 2018 and quickly rose to the top of the middleweight division. He defeated some of the best fighters in the world with his striking skills and creativity. He could switch stances, change angles, and surprise his opponents with unpredictable attacks. He could also taunt them with his dance moves and trash talk. He was not afraid to show his personality and have fun in the cage. He became champion in 2019 after knocking out Robert Whittaker in front of a record-breaking crowd in Melbourne. He defended his title twice against Yoel Romero and Paulo Costa before suffering his first loss to Jan Blachowicz in 2020. He tried to move up to the light heavyweight division to be the double champ, but he was outmatched by the bigger and stronger Polish fighter. He then went on to defend his title 3 more times before losing it to Alex Pereira at UFC 281 before reclaiming the title in the rematch at UFC 287. Adesanya is not done yet. He still has his sights on becoming the best fighter of all time. He still has his passion for learning and evolving. He still has his flair for entertaining and inspiring. He is Israel Adesanya, arguably the most beautiful striker the sport has ever seen. He has won 24 fights and only lost 2 in his MMA career before UFC 293. He dazzles his opponents with creative feints and his striking power. He's a force to be reckoned with, a fighter who brings anime flair to the UFC. In the style of a true champion, when Israel's undefeated run came to an end in his fight 3 years ago, he only had this to say. As they say, it is what it is. If I was gonna lose to anyone, what better person than Jan Blachowicz, a classy champion. A cool dude, a really nice guy, and a guy who has a great story himself. In order to win like a champion, one needs to also know how to lose like one. So it is only natural that Israel, a natural-born champion, would know how to do both perfectly. But his opponent on UFC 293 wasn't cool-headed like him. A formidable contender in the UFC middleweight division, Sean Strickland is known for his aggressive combat style and candid demeanor. He's caught the attention of many MMA enthusiasts, but beyond the octagon, he has a dark and troubled past. His childhood was terrible from the start, primarily due to his alcoholic father, who physically and mentally tortured his mother. Strickland had to come to a rescue on multiple occasions, but he never found peace within the 4 walls of his house in Corona. His father died of cancer, but not before damaging Strickland's mental health. In an interview with Ariel Helwani on the MMA Hour in 2021, the UFC middleweight fighter opened up about his traumatic childhood and gave each and every gory detail about his encounters with his father. He even revealed that he once asked his father to end his misery with a .45 caliber gun when he was just 17. Strickland's problems were not just with his father. He also had a grandfather who influenced him to go through a weird neo-Nazi white supremacist phase. This belief led him to carry out some pretty awful things in the real world until he started to realize the truth by spending time with people that he thought he hated. Perhaps one of the most shocking and unsettling comments made by Strickland was his offhand remark about wanting to be a serial killer, albeit without facing the consequences of going to jail. This comment was met with widespread condemnation and forced Strickland to later clarify that it was a dark joke taken out of context. context. Some may call him mad, some may call him passionate. Whether one agrees with him or not, the fight game needs fighters like him. He may not be the best for press conferences, but he's made the most of the UFC 293 spotlight. Growing up in a turbulent household with an abusive father, Sean Strickland never saw a peaceful day in his childhood. This may have shaped his current persona, which the champion Israel Adesanya has labeled insecure. Despite this tumultuous phase in his early life, Strickland has emerged as a distinct fighter who does what he does best: fighting, be it inside a steel cage or in life. He faced a stylebender at UFC 293 on September 9th in Sydney, the biggest fight of his life. What was his path to victory? Maybe he could walk down Adesanya and force him on the back foot, limiting his offensive options and making it a slower, more technical fight. That sounds good if his chin held up and he didn't get TKO'd. He also needed a big moment or two, maybe a knockdown, a takedown, or a close submission attempt. And he got his big moment. He was calm, composed, and confident from beginning to end. He never let Adesanya get comfortable, and he pulled off what felt like an unthinkable upset. There were no questions when it was over. He outfought Adesanya for almost 20 full minutes, after nearly sleeping him in the first round to win a decision that had no doubt and no controversy. But was it because Adesanya might be on the decline? It seems unfair to Strickland to flip from giving him all the praise, but we must keep in mind that pieces of both things can be true. Adesanya seemed reluctant to fully engage in some of the verbal exchanges with Strickland before the fight, and he seemed reluctant to engage in the octagon after getting hurt in the first round. He definitely got forced out of his natural rhythm. It is with all due respect to the former champion, but many people have given more resistance to Strickland in sparring. We don't know how badly hurt he was from the knockdown, the checked kicks, or the other damage he sustained, but that definitely wasn't his finest form. It begs the question, however, about whether there's a better version of himself that could be discovered, or if that's the new version of him that exists going forward as he approaches his 35th birthday next summer. This is the burning question on many people's minds in the aftermath of this fight. Did Strickland's feat of beating Adesanya surpass Matt Serra over George St. Pierre, Holly Holm over Ronda Rousey, and Chris Weidman over Anderson Silva, which many might consider the top 3 upsets in UFC history? All of those wins are such iconic moments. There's a lot of nostalgia involved when trying to put myself back in those moments and draw comparisons to what Strickland achieved. But how does it compare to the other great upsets in UFC history? Well, that depends on how you look at it. If you go by the hype and attention, then this is probably second only to Holm over Rousey. That was such a monumental moment given the wave of success Rousey was riding at the time. She was the biggest star in the sport, and everyone was watching her dominate her opponents. Holm came out of nowhere and knocked her out with a head kick that will be remembered forever. Strickland versus Adesanya wasn't that, and it was actually one of the weaker cards on paper than most recently. In fact, many people probably skipped out on watching this event because they thought the headliner was a done deal. But if you go by the impact and significance, then this might be the biggest upset ever. The sport is bigger and has more global appeal than it did when Serra beat St. Pierre or Weidman beat Silva, though Strickland's win gets the respect in that regard. And unlike those fights where the champions bounced back or faded away, we don't know what'll happen next with Adesanya. He was in his prime. He had cleaned out his division and even moved up to challenge for another belt. He looked like he had worked on all his weaknesses, flaws, and gotten rid of his rival, until Strickland came along and exposed him. On paper, however, it's all about historical context, and we're too close to UFC 293 to make a proper determination. We saw how dominant St. Pierre was in his rematch with Serra, which is why that's the #1 upset ever, in my opinion. Silva was in his late 30s when he lost to Weidman, then broke his leg in the rematch, robbing us of a true sense of finality. And Rousey, we know her history of handling losses poorly, and a rematch with Holm never came close to materializing. Like it or not, all signs point to Adesanya getting his rematch. It's then and there that we'll find out whether Strickland is his kryptonite, whether Adesanya is on the decline, or something in between. Until then, peace out.